Hello, everyone, to this, the second in our supporting Surrey talks this year, this time on well-being, burning brighter than your imposter syndrome with Donna Smith from Odinata, and brought to you by Surrey Law Society and Surrey Junior Lawyers Division. As you see, we've already had the first one, of which the recording is available, and looking at my Surrey lawyer received earlier this week, we even have an article from Anthony Taylor on leaving the office. But today, as mentioned, is Burning Bright Than Your Imposter Syndrome, sponsored kindly by Chadwick Knott. And in November, we'll be having difficult conversations, how to build positive and stable professional relationships. And so moving on to the things to consider. So as it mentions, should you wish to ask the speaker a question during the webinar, please use the Q&A facility. So do by all means, whilst Donna is talking, think about any questions you might have, so that once it comes to the Q&A session, then do ask your question straight away. And naturally says, if you'd like to do this anonymously, tick the send anonymously box. And also, if you'd like to speak to Donna at the end of the webinar, to ask a question in person, then or virtually in person, then do use the raise hand function, and the host can invite you to talk. And as noted here, the webinar is being recorded. And so now I'd hand over to Penny Hayway from Chadwick Knott to introduce the session and the speaker.
Hi, hopefully you can hear me okay. Thanks ever so much, Martin. Delighted to be here today and also to be sponsoring both Surrey Law Society and the Surrey JLD throughout the year on various events. But in particular, we were asked to sponsor one of the webinars coming up this year, and this one jumped out at me immediately. I think there was sort of stiff competition and I got in there first in terms of sponsorship. So it is a really interesting and fascinating area, and one that I'm particularly interested in, having left the legal profession 6 years ago, and now recognising that probably was as a result of burnout, which I know that Donna's going to cover today. So just briefly about Chadwick Knott, we're legal recruitment consultants and we cover the whole of the South East. I know that many of you will know us well from various other events. But if anybody would like to talk to me, my details are going to be sent to you. I think there's been some problems with opening our information leaflet. So if there's hopefully we'll resend that after, but any problems, just perhaps contact us direct and we can get that to you. So over to welcome Donna. Donna Smith has spent over 12 years studying and working in the legal profession. She says that she fought an almost daily battle with imposter syndrome and burnout, but having successfully overcome these challenges, she now works with lawyers at all stages of their career. And she particularly helps them to support their most important asset, which is themselves. And that is in dealing with burnout and the impact of imposter syndrome on us. So today you'll learn how to control your imposter syndrome and gain tools to help you thrive rather than just survive in your career and in life. So please welcome Donna Smith. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Penny, for that introduction. And thank you to SLJ and the I can't even say it now, Surrey Junior Lawyers Division and Surrey Law Society for inviting me here as part of your supporting your members programme. As Penny has just shared, I'm here to speak to you about how to burn brighter than your imposter syndrome. My aim for this session for you over the next 45 minutes or so is that you leave the session with some very easily and immediately applicable tools and techniques to really turn the volume down on that imposter syndrome. So let's dive straight in. You are brilliant. You're brilliant at what you do, and you're brilliant at how you do it. You're super smart. You're motivated. You are ambitious. And being in the legal profession, this is like a dream come true. You want to be the best lawyer you can be, right? But something's holding you back. Something in your mind that's saying, I'm not good enough. I don't have what it takes. I'm going to get found out. I don't belong in the legal profession. And that voice is imposter syndrome. Now, imposter syndrome, it's a real term for people who think they're faking it, but they aren't. It's that false belief that your successes are as a result of maybe luck or even fraud, rather than your skills, your talent, your abilities. And it's fair to say that imposter syndrome can trip all of us up in a number of different ways. So maybe your imposter syndrome is the one that prevents you from putting yourself forward for the opportunities you really want to go for. But imposter syndrome says, who do you think you are? You couldn't do that. Just stay where you are. Don't put yourself forward. Maybe your imposter syndrome is the one that says, don't tell them you're struggling. Don't tell them you're having a hard time. They'll think less of you. They'll think you can't cope. Shh, don't tell them. Just keep going. You'll be fine. Or maybe your imposter syndrome is the one that I like to call my comparison monster. You know, the one where it looks at your peers and your colleagues around you and looks at how well they're doing, how far they've got, and then looks at you and goes, huh, they're obviously better than you. Now, if these descriptions of imposter syndrome are landing with you and are making sense, if you like, what I want you to know is it doesn't have to be that way, okay? So just imagine for a moment that this is your reality. Imagine having the ability to do whatever it takes to succeed as a lawyer. Imagine being able to enjoy life's challenges and learning from everything that comes your way. And imagine having tremendous confidence, not just confidence, tremendous confidence in your skills, your talents, your abilities. Can you imagine how that would feel? But for some of you on this call, that's not your reality. Maybe some of you have been taught that actually too much confidence, that's called arrogance. That's not an attractive quality. Don't get too big for your boots. Maybe some of you have been conditioned to believe that success in the legal profession, that doesn't come easy. It's hard work. It's going to be tough. And maybe, like me, like many of us, you have just that natural tendency to focus on the negatives, to focus on the gaps in your abilities, in your skills, to focus on the things that didn't quite go so well. If that's more your reality, please know it's not your fault. You're not doing anything wrong. There is nothing wrong with you. Imposter syndrome can affect all of us. And it's possible, it's totally possible to flip it around, to turn those beliefs, those tendencies around. So for the next 30 minutes or so, what you're going to learn from this talk could be career changing, if not life changing, because we all get triggered by imposter syndrome at one point or another, all of us, no matter where we are in our career. The key is knowing what to do about it when that happens. So I'm going to share with you my 3 top tips on how to burn brighter than your imposter syndrome. These are the things I do myself and that I train and coach my clients on in the Burn Bright program. And these 3 tips will help you to burn brighter than your imposter syndrome. They will help you to turn the volume down of that inner critic and up on your self-belief, your self-worth, and your self-confidence. So let's dive in. Top tip number 1, get clear on your why. Now, we're going to do a little bit of, I say audience participation here, but this is where you get time to make this real for you, okay? So hopefully you've got a pen and paper handy or some other form of capturing notes. And what I want for you to do is take a moment to write down your answer to the following question. What is it about your legal career that you are passionate about? What is it about your legal career that you're passionate about? So just take a moment to write down your response to that. And then underneath what you've just written, I would like you to answer the following question. Why? Why are you passionate about that thing you just wrote down? I'll give you a few moments to write your answer to that. And then underneath that response you just wrote down, please answer the following question. Why? So whatever you've just written down, why? Why is that important? I'll give you a few moments. Okay, now underneath that response you just wrote down, I have another question for you. You may be able to guess what it's going to be. Why? Whatever you've just written down, why? Why is that important? Again, I'll give you a few moments. And then finally, and this is where I go, I'm kind of sorry, but not sorry, but there's one more question you need to answer. Underneath what you've just written, the final question, no surprises, why? Whatever you've just written down, why? Why is that important to you? I'll just give you a few moments to finish that off. What I've just taken you through there is a process of going 5 levels deep into your why. Why are you a member of the legal profession? Why did you want to be a lawyer? This is so important when it comes to burning brighter than your imposter syndrome, because when you are super clear on your bigger why, the 5 levels deep why, that's what carries you through when imposter syndrome strikes. It's what helps you find the strength to push forward and keep going no matter what, okay? All of us have a surface level why. Every single one of you would have a stock answer to when somebody says, so why did you join the legal profession? What is it you love about the job that you do? We all have a surface level response. Very few of us, however, dig deeper, certainly to the depths of 5 levels deeper, okay? Now, when I used to practice law, or when I decided I wanted to be a lawyer, my why at the time was quite simply that I wanted to be the first member of my family to A, go to university, and B, to join such a revered profession as the legal profession. I was breaking the mold. That was my surface level why. I did not go deeper. I didn't even know to go deeper. And that ended up having quite significant consequences for me once I qualified, which I'll share with you a little bit later. For now, though, choose to burn brighter than your imposter syndrome by reminding yourself of your deeper why every single day. So that's top tip number 1. Before I take you on to the second top tip, what I'd like for you to do now is reflect on your priorities for the rest of the week, okay? And I want you to write down your top 3 priorities that you absolutely must get done before the end of the week, okay? I'm not going to ask you to share what they are. I just need for you to take a moment and go, okay, between now and the end of the week, these are the top 3 things I absolutely must get done. Take a few moments to capture those down. Okay. Now, what I would like for you to do is pop in the chat box, please. What number did your well-being come in at? And those top 3 priorities for the rest of this week, what number did your well-being come in at? Okay. Not at all. It didn't. Not at all. Didn't feature. We had a 1, which was brilliant. Got a 0, didn't feature. 0, 0. Okay. The person who put 1, Deepika, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. That's fantastic. I have never had a 1 as a response to this activity. So that's phenomenal. You'll notice from the rest of the, yes, Alison, well-being. What's that? Absolutely. And Martin, yeah, I would agree. National Gallery to see friends, that links. I wish I was going to the National Gallery this evening. But you get the idea. For the majority of you, it's not even in there at all. Now, why is this relevant to how you burn brighter than your imposter syndrome? Well, let's look at top tip number 2. Top tip number 2 is to protect your best asset. And in case you're wondering what that is, it's you. You are your best asset. Now, when I was newly qualified, I approached a number of the partners in the law firm I was working at, and I asked them the question, now I've qualified, what can I do to help me become the best lawyer I can be? And one of the partners said to me, Donna, you need to read more. You need to read more books. Okay. And the other partner said, Donna, for you to be the best lawyer you can be, you need to be ruthless. Now, I've got to be honest, at the time, those 2 pieces of advice, they didn't really land too well with me. They didn't excite me. They didn't motivate me. They didn't even feel like they fit me. I mean, to be ruthless, it's like, do you not know me? Can't be ruthless. Now, today, several years, well, many years after qualifying, I adopt those 2 pieces of advice consistently. So the read more books. For me, the way I interpret that now is to not stop learning. Wherever you are, whatever stage you're at in your legal career, your growth, your development, your learning is a forever journey. So do read more books. Read about networking, read about referrals, about business development, about personal brand. Being successful as a lawyer is so much more than just being brilliant at the law. It's about how you interact with others. It's about how you relate to others. It's about how you influence others. It's about how you build your resilience and how you learn how to manage your state, particularly when under pressure. So do read more. Protect your best asset by reading more. Do not stop learning. And as for the being ruthless, now I am ruthless when it comes to well-being and self-care. And this bit is particularly for those of you who do not have their well-being on your priority list for the rest of this week. Okay? Your well-being has to be a non-negotiable because it is vital. If you are not at your best, you cannot be at your best for the people you want to serve. Okay. And in the world that we work in now, you know, there's a lot of hybrid working out there. Some of you will be spending half your week at home, some of you having half the week in the office, and a blend of all things in between. So the ability to maintain boundaries between you at work and you not at work, they were challenging before the pandemic, but they're virtually non-existent now. So be ruthless with your boundaries. Be very clear with yourself when you're working, when you are not. Make sure you're switching off at a reasonable hour of an evening so that your mind and your body has time to decompress, to refresh, to recharge. Make sure you take a lunch break. I know we're doing this session today on a lunch break, but do still have a break. Step away from the screen every single day. Take notice of what you're eating, what you're drinking, the quality of sleep you have, how much exercise, fresh air you're getting. Now, I am telling you things you already know. This is not new stuff. But please don't underestimate how continuing to focus on your growth and development and being ruthless with your well-being, do not underestimate the impact that has on turning down the volume of that imposter syndrome voice in your mind. Because whenever you prioritize you, your well-being, your development, what you're saying to yourself on a subconscious level is that you matter, you are worthy, and you are enough. So, top tip number 2, protect your best asset, which is you. The final tip I'd like to share with you in this session is to ask for help. And by that, I mean create a support network around you of people who understand you, understand your journey. Maybe they're further along on the journey than you are, but who can provide you with that safe space for you to talk through what's going on for you, what are you feeling challenged by, how imposter syndrome's tripping you up, what goals you want to work to. So ask for help, get yourself a coach, get yourself a mentor, get yourself an accountability buddy. And if you don't know what one of those are, it's someone who is on a similar journey to you, like-minded, and you can help each other as you move forward, overcoming your imposter syndrome, working towards your goals. But you hold each other accountable, because when we get busy, we can lose sight of these things. And one of the reasons why imposter syndrome gets such a grip of us is because we're too busy to stop and shine a light on it and see it for what it really is. That false belief that's getting in the way of you fulfilling your full potential as a lawyer. So in connection with this tip, I want you to just think for a moment, who do you know who could be part of your support network? Who do you know who you could ask for help? Who do you know who's a coach? Who do you know who could be a mentor? Who do you know who could be your accountability buddy? And I want you to write down at least 3 names of people who could fulfill those 3 roles for you. If you've got more than 3, brilliant, but a minimum of 3 names. And then your mission, your Burn Bright mission, should you choose to accept it, after this webinar, is to reach out to those 3 people, or more if you had more names, and ask them to be a part of your support network. Nobody said you had to do this on your own. Nobody. And you can blame me. Reach out to them and say, hey, I've been on a webinar today with Surrey Law Society, and the speaker was talking about how to burn brighter than your imposter syndrome. One of her recommendations was to build a support network. She said I should consider getting a mentor, and your name came to mind. Would you be willing to help me? Now, some of you might be sitting there thinking, there is no way I'm asking that person. They're too busy, they're too senior, they'll think less of me for asking them for help. That's your imposter syndrome getting in the way again. So let's flip that. Let's put you in the place of receiving a similar email. Let's say you got an email from someone saying, I've just been on a webinar about imposter syndrome. One of the ways in which I can get over it and burn brighter than it is to build a support network. I'd love to get a mentor, someone who's a bit further along the journey than me, and I thought of you. Would you be willing to help? Now, how would you respond to an email like that? I'm guessing there is a high likelihood you would say yes, because let's face it, as lawyers, we all came into this profession wanting to help and serve others. So when we get a request for help, what do? We say yes. So please give those names on your list the opportunity to say yes to helping you. Just reach out and ask. So they're the 3 tips. Get clear on your why, protect your best assets, and ask for help. Now, how do I know these tips work? How is it that I'm standing here today saying this is how you burn brighter than your imposter syndrome? Well, quite simply, I have struggled with imposter syndrome for all of my, I was going to say career then, but then the voice came up and said, actually, probably your whole life, Donna. But these are the things I use to help me burn brighter than that voice. When I was practicing law, I really, really, really wish my supervising partner had said, Donna, you're brilliant. You're brilliant at what you do, and you're brilliant at how you do it. They did not say that to me. And I certainly wasn't saying it to myself. What I was saying to myself was, Donna, you're a fraud. You do not deserve to be here. You do not belong. This kind of career, this profession, it's not for the likes of you. I was suffering so badly from imposter syndrome, it ended up burning me out and ultimately derailed my career. And I'd like to take a few minutes to tell you a bit about that journey, if I may. So I decided at a very young age I wanted to be a lawyer. I was 10 years old. Who decides at 10 what they're going to do with the rest of their life? But I did. I wanted to be a lawyer. As I said, I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to be significant. And I wanted to be the first member of my family to ever do anything like this. So I was literally tunnel visioned. School, college, university, law school, training contract, qualified. There was nothing getting in my way. And I qualified back in September 2001. So we're going back a little while. And I remember that day as if it were yesterday, because I sat in my office and I cried a lot. And they were not tears of joy, satisfaction, or pride, or achievement. They were tears of fear, confusion, and uncertainty. I was completely directionless. The reason why, linking back to top tip number 1, if you remember, I said I only had a surface level why. I wanted to be the first member of my family to go to university and qualify as a lawyer. I'd not once thought past once I'd qualified. So I'd qualified. And I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a goal. I didn't have a direction. So I was super, super vulnerable to imposter syndrome striking. So I'm qualified. I had my own caseload, monthly billable targets, but I had no idea how to be a lawyer. And what made it worse was it seemed like everyone around me, my peers, my colleagues, my seniors, it seemed like everybody had got a handle on this business of being a lawyer, apart from me. I felt like it was only me who was struggling. The thing is, I was already brilliant at being me. It was the things I didn't know that were tripping me up, if that makes sense. There was nothing wrong with me. I was not a fraud, but imposter syndrome had got me. And I really didn't know what to do. Now, knowing what I know now, being a coach and mentor in this field, I really do believe that if I'd have had a me back then, I don't think I'd have left the legal profession. I don't think I'd have felt so isolated, so confused, and frankly baffled why everyone else was keeping their head above water and I was drowning. But I didn't have a me. And so I focused on the things that I could control, because I definitely did not have control of my imposter syndrome. Not at all. So here's what I did. The first thing I did was I moved law firms a lot. In the 5 years of being qualified, I worked at 4 different law firms. That's almost 1 a year. And the reasoning behind that was I felt that I just not found the right cultural fit for my personality. So I kept moving law firms. What I learned about imposter syndrome from doing that is that imposter syndrome doesn't care which law firm it's based at. It'll move with you. And in fact, each move enabled the voice to get stronger, because each move felt like another failure. See, you couldn't cut it in that firm. What makes you think you're going to do any better at this firm? Oh, look, you've moved on again. Told you. You're not good enough for this. You're not meant for this role. Oh, look, you've moved again. So by trying to find a better fit, I ended up adding fuel to the imposter syndrome fire. So then I was like, well, if moving law firms isn't working for me, I'll move a whole other continent. And I went to California and I sat the California bar exam. And the thinking behind that move was, well, if I'm going to be unhappy practicing law, I may as well do it where there are beautiful beaches, stunning mountains, and around the clock sunshine. What I learned about imposter syndrome there was it can fly. It followed me to California and tripped me up there as well. So that didn't work. So then I did the only thing I knew how to. I buried myself under a lot of work and a lot of red wine. My aim behind that was trying to drown out the voice in my head that was telling me I was not good enough. What I learned about imposter syndrome is it's not afraid of hard work. In fact, the harder I worked, the louder it got. And actually, imposter syndrome is a better drink than I am, because it didn't matter the amount of red wine I tried to consume, it could still talk coherently, which is really annoying. So I ended up leaving the legal profession 5 years after I qualified, severely burnt out, struggling with imposter syndrome, and a huge fan of red wine. But it didn't have to be like that. And if anything of my story is resonating with you, I want you to know it doesn't have to be like that, okay? It took me several career changes before I learned that I could turn the volume down on imposter syndrome. When I learned how to do it, it was like magic. I started to use 3 tips that I've shared with you today consistently and intentionally when I launched my own business almost 5 years ago. And I continue to use them to this day. Every time that voice of imposter syndrome strikes up, these are the tips I go to dial it down so I can burn brighter than my imposter syndrome. I remind myself of my why each and every day. My why is I'm on a mission to make burn bright the norm in the legal profession so that what happened to me does not happen to you. That's my deeper why. I protect my best asset, myself. I am always growing, always learning, always developing, much to the annoyance of my husband, I might add. I'm always signing up for new courses, new webinars. We've got books everywhere. It is a forever journey, and I am 100% committed to that. And as for being ruthless with my well-being, some of you may have heard me speak at other events when I talk about the Burn Bright program and how to break the cycle of burnout in your legal career. That's when I share my story of burnout. I had a severe burnout back in 2017. And as a result of that, I take my well-being very seriously, and I am ruthless with it. It is a non-negotiable. And I surround myself with people who can help me, people who have been where I want to get to, people who understand the challenges, the highs and lows, and that can give me that safe space to go, imposter syndrome strong at the minute, I need some help working through it. These 3 tips have been a game changer. They enable me and they enable my clients to see imposter syndrome for what it is. It's a false belief. And it enables us to choose to burn brighter than that voice in our head. So maybe you've come on this session today because you want help with how to deal with your imposter syndrome. And you're sitting there thinking, I can't do this on my own. In a moment, I'll share a slide that's got my contact details on. If you'd like to have a chat offline, reach out to me and let's talk about this. Imposter syndrome does not have to control you. And before I open up the floor to Q&As, I just want to share that following these 3 tips that you can start doing right now, from the minute we finish this webinar, you can start doing these 3 things right now, and they will turn the volume down on your imposter syndrome and turn the volume up on your self-worth, self-confidence, and self-belief. The question is, will you choose to burn brighter than your imposter syndrome now that you know how to? The legal profession is a brilliant profession, and it needs to keep its brilliant people. So remember, you're already brilliant. So the final thing I'd like to say is this. Please remember, it's time to burn bright, not out. Thank you so much for listening to me speak. Martin, if you'd like to unmute yourself and let's open up the floor to some questions. Thank you.
Certainly, Donna, that regarding questions, the thing that strikes out to me is that you mentioned, for example, that people could blame you when they're asking for help. But I wondered if you had any other particular tips for when it comes to asking for help for people who, particularly if they are approaching breakdown, will probably be feeling very hard to ask for help, and anything that might particularly work.
So the first step when asking for help is recognizing that you need it. I think, reflecting back on my own experience, there were signs that I was struggling, and I could see the signs, but there's no other way to say it. I chose to ignore them because I didn't think anybody was there to help. So the first step to asking for help is to spot the signs. So the signs are things like you're exhausted, but you're unable to sleep. Maybe your appetite has changed. Maybe you've lost interest in the things that you used to enjoy outside of work. Maybe you find yourself saying things either out loud to other people or to yourself, saying something's got to give. Something's got to give. I'm so tired all the time. If you're spotting any of those signs, that's the first step to go, I need to ask for help. And as for asking for help, a tip about that is just do it. I don't know how else to say that, Martin. Just ask for help. And if you're worried about what other people think, do what I suggested earlier. Flip it over. If this were a friend of yours, a colleague of yours, coming to you going, I'm really struggling. I'm doubting myself. I'm questioning myself. I'm not sleeping. I really do need some help. How would you respond to that? you'd want to help them, wouldn't you?
Naturally.
And this is the thing with imposter syndrome. It convinces us that we're the only ones struggling with this. So the way I get around that when I feel a bit unsure about asking for help is I put myself on the other side of that request and go, if somebody came to me with this request for help, I would absolutely wholeheartedly dive in and help them. So ask for help. And if you're worried about what people say, flip it over, put yourself in their shoes.
Thank you very much, Donna. And for getting clear on your why, do you have any particular examples of people any whys 5 stages down that you feel might be particularly useful? Would that be possibly, or should people be more finding their whys themselves rather than thinking of other examples?
Yeah, it's a good question, that, Martin, because I think because we're not used to going that deep into why we want to do something, it can feel clunky at first, and we can feel like we're seeking for this perfect answer. But the thing is, your deeper why is personal to you. It's not going to be the same as the person next to you. And actually, it's not something you even have to share with anybody. So I think if there are people here today who are like, I really struggled with this, give yourself time. I gave you a couple of minutes, but it was to illustrate the depth that we can go into. So I would take that as a way, as an action to go, I'm going to spend some time sitting with this. You know, what is it about my legal career that I'm passionate about? Give yourself some time to reflect on that. And then as you reflect on that, really take the time to dig into it and go, well, actually, what I'm passionate about is the fact that I get to help people. Okay. Well, why? Why is it that you want to help people? And just, this is important. You need to give yourself the time to dig into this, because it was only when I worked through this. So mine was, well, what's my why? Well, I want to be a burn bright coach. Why? Well, because burnout it's everywhere and people shouldn't have to suffer it. Well, why is that important? Well, because I believe there's a different way. Well, why is that important? Well, I didn't know there was a different way when I was practicing law. And if I had have done, maybe I wouldn't have left law. Well, why is that important? Well, that's because I want to make sure what happened to me don't happen to anybody else. So you need to give yourself the time to just let it filter through, and don't be worried about it being a right or a wrong answer. It's right for you.
Thank you, Donna. And I know I've been monopolizing the questions, so anyone do by all means ask your questions, whether it's the chat, the Q&A section, or raise your hand up to ask. And on the topic of protecting your best asset, yourself, that any tips you feel people could do to start positive reinforcement to protect themselves beyond what you've said already? For example, I quite like holding on to client view. So in my hand, I've got a card from a client thanking me.
Yeah, absolutely. The positive reinforcement is absolutely key. I'm a huge fan of keeping a folder or a file on your computer of all the positive feedback. You know, I mentioned earlier, one of the reasons why imposter syndrome can get such a grip of us is because we're naturally designed to focus on the negatives, what's missing, because it's part of our survival mechanism. So by keeping those things that positively reinforce how brilliant you are, it's rewiring our focus onto the things that are positive. So anytime somebody praises the work you've done, anytime someone thanks you for what you've done, anytime you get the desired outcome for a client, capture that. This is really, really key. Alongside that, though, Martin, and I think this is something that even now I still struggle with from time to time, the continually learning, the reading more example. It's important to learn from our mistakes. Being a lawyer, I know I certainly felt this. It's almost like this expectation that as a lawyer, you know everything. You can fix everything. You have all the answers. And therefore, making a mistake is just not possible. But the crazy thing is, it's in our mistakes where we get the deepest sense of learning. So alongside the positive reinforcement, embrace the mistakes, embrace the things that go wrong. Take those mistakes to your support network and go, I was working on this matter, I overlooked this, or this went wrong. I want to discuss the learnings from that so I can move on from it. So it's about, this isn't about ignoring all the bad or the negatives. It's about bringing the positives more to the forefront and learning to manage and cope with the challenges and the negatives. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense. And in fact, I can see in the chat that someone's saying they've got a positive feedback folder to refer to. And I see in the Q&A we have a question. And also, so better as that even if you don't mention you're anonymous, I don't propose to read out anyone's names in case that's holding back anyone. But here in the Q&A, I can see the question, more support / help also needs to be available from management level of law firms. It's sometimes hard to ask for help when it's not readily available. How do you think this can be achieved?
Good question. Oh my gosh, that is the $1 million question, isn't it? If we could answer this, I think the legal profession would change entirely. How can this be achieved? I think the starting point is to have conversations, which I know is easier said than done, but if nobody's talking about it, then nothing will change. And imposter syndrome is one of those topics that everybody knows it's out there. It's more talked about now, you know, we're running events on it now. But unless you don't start to have the conversations, nothing will change. So my recommendation would be to talk about the events like these that you've been through. You know, back at your law firm, share the learnings, share the slides, have the conversations. In your next one-to-one with your manager, talk about the session that you've been on, talk about what really resonated with you. Ask them how they've dealt with imposter syndrome in their career. Ask them how they think the firm could better support its people with dealing with this kind of challenge. I just think the more we talk about it, the easier we can start making changes. Now, that being said, some of the law firms I used to practice in, I know I would have struggled to have those conversations. So if that's you, I'd go outside of the firm and seek help. Seek a mentor, a coach, an accountability buddy who works in a different law firm. Maybe somebody through the Law Society, maybe somebody through the Junior Lawyers Division. But either way, still ask for the help.
Thank you, Donna. Because yes, asking is the most important thing. And I see we have another question. In the work you do and in your experience, does imposter syndrome affect younger / newer solicitors or older / more experienced solicitors more often? It may seem a silly question, but it almost seems harder to admit / confront it when you are a senior lawyer.
Great question. Thank you for asking that. So this is only based on my own experience. I haven't done any deep research into it. There's no scientific studies that I've done. This is just from my own experience and from the range of legal professionals I've worked with. Imposter syndrome is not choosy. It will join you at the start of your career, at the middle of your career, at the end of your career. So I don't notice that it seems to affect the younger, newer ones more than the more experienced ones more often. What I do notice is that, as you say, it's the younger, newer solicitors that seem more willing to embrace it and go, hang on, this can't be what I'm supposed to have to deal with for the rest of my legal career. Seeing that it's harder to admit or confront it as a more senior lawyer, it's never too late. And I think, again, as lawyers, it's very easy to forget that we're people at the end of the day. We're people with our own limiting beliefs, our own challenges, our own hurdles to overcome. So to me, the clients that I work with who are more senior in the legal profession, what we talk about is how if they can embrace this and talk about it and confront it, they then end up becoming a really positive role model for the younger, more junior members of the legal profession. You know, I remember back when I was a junior lawyer, I used to have my seniors on a pedestal. They were unflappable. Nothing fazed them. And then it was only after I'd left law and a few years later, I met up with one of my first supervising partners. And he said, I struggled with that all the time, but we just didn't talk about it. So now I agree with you, it can seem harder, but what a great opportunity to be a shining example of what you can do and what you can achieve when you choose to burn brighter than your imposter syndrome.
Thank you, Donna. Yes, it does seem to relate to the previous question rather well on law management helping. That I believe that's all the questions for now, unless anyone has any they particularly want to say. And thank you very much for opening up, Donna, about your own experiences. That as you can all see, that there are Donna's details to and even a helpful code to scan. And so, but otherwise, I think that my best thing I can do is say that it's a sunny day outside. I hope you all take a break and look after your well-being. Thank you again, Donna, and Surrey Law Society, and I wish you all good day.